Welcome, everybody. This is a reflection on the 12 steps. This is not an AA meeting. It's a member's take on the exact nature of the wrong, page 64 of the AA Big Book, and the solution in the 12 steps. The meeting is being recorded. It's not an all-share meeting, but we invite people to participate rather well and ask questions.
There'll be shares.
Yeah. So I picked a passage, Paul. Let me get back where I was here. Hold on a second. There we go. It's on page 53, middle of the page. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that God either is everything or else nothing. God either is or he isn't. What's our choice to be? Arrived at this point, we are squarely confronted with the question of faith. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. The outlines and the promise of a new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. Friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we'd been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we didn't like to lose our support. That was natural, but let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, have we not been brought here by a certain kind of faith? For didn't we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have the confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we've been faithful, objectively faithful to the God of reason. So in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. And that's it right there.
Well, thanks, Kurt, and welcome everyone. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome. The primary point of these Zooms is to entertain the idea that the exact nature of the wrong is foreign to you or foreign to us. Because in my own little journey in recovery, I was bound by this identification with what has defeated me until I saw that self was not me, and then the possibility of being free from it became available. It had always been available, but I became available to it. So that's and I didn't feel like it was addressed much in our community where I live. And this is really the genesis of this whole platform, is just to put an idea in coming out of the book about the exact nature of the wrong, which is on page 64. And here it's talking about our real nature in a sense, which is faith. And it says AA has, perhaps there's two ways. Perhaps the better way is trusting the infinite rather than finite self. So the first thing to look at to me really would be the trusting the finite self. Because if you believe you're trusting the infinite, you may be just trusting the finite self, trusting the infinite. So it was important to have that recognition and clarity. And so here he goes. He says, and the thing is, obviously, some people believe they were born alcoholics, but here they're saying when we became alcoholic. Yeah. So obviously, we were something else before we became alcoholic, and we can unbecome alcoholic with this program of recovery. Yeah. A day at a time. Is the potential to return to the alcoholism there? Yes. But are you living as an alcoholic today? Probably not. Yeah. So you have been relieved from this bondage of self. And basically, today you may have a lot of problems, but this problem doesn't exist for you anymore, which is incredible. So solution, literally. because to me, this was the elephant in the room. It was sucking up all the oxygen, and of course, the head would like to look outside and look at everything that it thinks is bothering it, but it was always this giant shadow of the unfettered alcoholism was over my shoulder. So it says here, when we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis. Wow, this is a favorite view of Kurt, and the self-imposed crisis. When I used to read that from the bondage of self, I thought I was imposing that crisis. Yes. So I was the self that imposed the crisis on whatever else I am. So a self-imposed crisis is a crisis imposed by an outside condition. Yeah. Even though it may look like it's inside, it's foreign to us. We were not born with alcoholism. It says we became one. Yeah. So we were a fertile little petri dish that alcoholism could find a toehold in, and then it grew in there. And then we see what happens when it grows. Yeah. So, and then the program is we're going to outgrow that and grow into a new condition. Yeah. By admitting that we can't do that. Yeah. And allowing something else to. Yeah. And we follow certain suggestions and a way of life. And it sort of basically keeps you on the operating table. And then if you don't get up and don't play doctor, shit works out. Don't you think? I do. 36 years now. So when we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we just read that as a something foreign to us hasn't imposed a crisis on us. What is that? Really, the bondage of self, literally. Yeah. So knowing it or not, we're in the act of being identified as that which has defeated us, which doesn't promise a very sunny future in a sense. Yes. It says we need to get down to the causes and conditions and the exact nature of the wrong. Well, we're proposing what the exact nature of the wrong is. Yes. It's the mental state's act of being identified as self. I do not believe you are the doer of the mental state. I believe you're aware of the mental state, and you're not aware of a lot of its activities. I do not think they're your activities. I just don't. I don't think you think. I'd like to see you. I like to see you think for 20 minutes straight. I don't. I think there's thoughts, and you notice them. Yeah. And then those thoughts change the meaning when they're preceded by my thoughts. And your thoughts don't usually defeat me, but my thoughts can. Yeah. And that I think that's a worthy topic to sort of investigate. Yeah. What does that feeling of my mean? Because I think that's really opens up us to the defeat of this bondage of self. I do. Yeah. And of course, when you're getting defeated, you'd like to have some momentary relief. So you get loaded and you fucking act out and shit with the hopes that you could get a little bit of relief from that bondage of self, only tightening the screws, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So self-imposed crisis isn't you. You didn't do it to you. Yeah. You do not hate yourself. There's not a you that hates the other aspect of you. Yeah. We could not postpone or evade. Yeah. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. In this case, because of the extremity of the disease, you have to present it in an extreme way. Yeah. So it's either this way or that way. They're not saying, well, they're going to integrate and then that which ran away is going to come back into the flock and it's going to be adapted. No, it's saying there's only two ways to go. You are not the driver, you are the driven down those two ways. The two drivers can be self, finite self, or infinite. That's basically it. You have no option to be the driver. You are the driven. Yeah. And there's two drivers that can be driving you. It can either be the infinite or the finite. They're not saying it's a little mix or a conglomerate or a little finite has 54% and the other has 46%. Yeah, it doesn't say that. It's either one or the other, basically. Because they were dealing with an extreme situation. People who don't come or leave this program, a lot die. You know, it's not like, yeah. So, and what would trusting finite self look like? Or relying on self look like? Could you imagine? I would think the highest form of relying on something would be identified as it. I don't see how you could be more relying on something than taking it to be you. I cannot see. That's fucking pretty far down the road of relying. And it says in the fear inventory, why are we in so much fear? Isn't it because self-reliance has failed us? What does self-reliance look like? Well, taking your thoughts to be honest and good orderly direction, probably. They use the word reason quite a lot in these paragraphs. That reason, and in this paragraph, it talks about the abject faith in this reason. And someone told us what the definition of the word abject means. And it means spiritless servility. Isn't that incredible? So when we are being driven by the finite self, we, for all intents and purposes, are in a condition of spiritless servility. That's why the answer was spiritual, because the problem is arid, it's barren of spirit. It's spiritless servility. That's incredible. What a statement, really. To have, and they used that in the book. We had faith, we had abject faith, which means our faith had brought us into a condition of being spiritless, servile. Wow. Incredible. That same faith given over to the higher power will produce completely different effects. Completely. It's the same faith, yes, but completely different effects. So the driven is the faith that we represent. Who is going to be the driver of it? Haven't we had enough examples of what it's like to be driven by self? By being driven into self-imposed crises and then applying self-imposed solutions to the problems that just make it fucking worse? Yeah. We are experts of how it's what it's like to be driven because of the extreme conditions we were brought to. Yeah. Now we're just going to admit the impossibility of us changing the driver. We begged it, we ba, it just fucking keeps driving. We're going to bring in another driver by making a decision, which is the third step, and then starting the working steps. And in that procedure, they found they can produce a spiritual awakening, which will defeat the spiritless servility to self. Yeah. And to the point where the problem will not exist for you. That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I have a problem in my leg getting run over by the car, but it still exists for me. Yeah. It was never anywhere near the problem of addiction and alcoholism. And now that does not exist for me. Isn't that incredible? Incredible. The leg making that stupid move, what was that now? 34 years ago, or what, 44 years ago, yeah, has left a lot of effect on this action figure for 40 something years. Changed a lot of its directions. I just had ran 5.5 miles that morning. I haven't run, 50 feet unless the police were running after me. Really. So, but this, you can live as if the problem doesn't exist for you. I mean, that's unbelievable to me. Unbelievable. So, yes, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. This is not going to be a merger of the corporation of self with the infinite. Yeah, it's not. It's one or the other to make it an extreme choice. Yes. As Jesus said, you can't serve two masters at the same time. They're describing the two masters, or you could see them as the two drivers. One is finite self, one is the infinite, whatever that may mean to you. Yeah. It's more what it feels to you than means to you. Yeah. The meanings are usually misunderstandings, but the sense of feeling, sensing the presence, feeling that new power flow in, that's fucking gold. Yeah. So option is two drivers. Yeah. Which is it? You're going to be a car called, this model is called Paul. So it's a Paul, let's say, dash Ford, and Paul's going to drive like a Ford. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's not a great turning capacity and shit like that, but it's where the Ford of Paul is going to be driven into is really the driver. Yeah. The way it drives, you can work on and it'll get better and stuff. But the real situation is what's driving it. Yeah. Then there is a solution to that. Yeah. I just watched a show on TV. It was like a stalker, and man, it was like almost impossible to get this person out of the other person's life. Yeah, this is sort of like the driver. The Ford has had enough; it just can't kick the fucking driver out. So then we admit that, and we make a decision as the car. I want another driver, and then we jump into the working steps. Yeah, and then what happens? It's going to lead to a spiritual awakening that for many of us is sufficient enough to keep us free from that other driver. Yeah. It may still be in the car, but it's in the trunk or the back seat. We may even buy it fake brake and a fake gas so it can act like it's driving, but it's not going to have the impact like it was when it was behind the wheel. Yes? Yes. So, I mean, give it a pedal, a brake pedal and a gas pedal. It's great. So, yeah. So, this is one of the favorite things that comes into here. All right. Arrived at this point, so what point are they talking about? that point of there's two different ways to go. Yeah. You can't stay on the one road and say you're on the other road. It's either one or the other. Yes. You can't use the one road, trusting finite self, to go on the other road of trusting the infinite. It would still be trusting finite self. And if you don't believe faith is available, if you believe you don't have faith, that's faith. Your belief you don't have faith is a form of faith. Yeah. So it says here, arrived at this point, we were squarely, I need some glasses soon, eh? We were squarely confronted, with the question of faith. Yeah. First, I was confronted with how much fucking faith was put in self. Mind-boggling, to the point I sat in a room with people who had been defeated by the same foreign thing, thinking I was terminally unique. And so were they. It's incredible. Yeah. I remember listening to people, and I had them. My condition was no one had my thoughts. No one felt like I did, and no one had done the crazy shit that I did. Sat there a couple of months listening to people share their thoughts, their feelings, the actions they did. And I came to two conclusions. How did these people get my thoughts? Or they're not my thoughts. Yeah. And that was a big watershed moment when I realized at least a large swath of the thoughts I was noticing I could frame as alcoholic thoughts. And you know what happened? I got some relief from those thoughts. They got pushed, instead of being right on me like a saran wrap, they got pushed out. And possibilities grew in that space between me and the thoughts. Yeah, it did. And my life started to get better and change because I wasn't being directed by self-centered thoughts. Yeah, yeah. The first thing that changed in the car was the GPS. Yeah. I wasn't buying and subscribing to the driver's GPS anymore. I started subscribing to the higher power driver's GPS. Even though everything looked like the self was still driving, I was getting out of the habit of listening to it, and I was following the suggestions and the principles of the other driver, which was the infinite. Yeah. And the Ford could see, man, I wasn't that bad of a Ford after all. It was mostly the driver's fault, not the driven. Yeah. And it was some fucking relief. Yeah. Could you imagine a guilty, shame ridden car? So every time you'd go out to it in the morning, it wouldn't turn over because it felt so fucking guilty about the shit or where it gone? That's insane. Fucking send the driver to jail. Why do you send the Toyota to jail? So here we go. I'm going to try to read this again. So reason toward some of us had already walked over the bridge. It goes on. And then it goes into, when we look at this dilemma, either one way or the other, let us think a little more closely without knowing it. Isn't this the condition that the parasite has a field day with? It keeps us in a condition of not knowing what's going on. And in that condition, it tells us what's going on. And then with that information, there's decisions made based on self that cause a lot of fucking havoc. Yes? Because the Ford's picking up the wrong fucking info. Yeah. So without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood, he's talking about this dilemma. Your life is obviously fucked. You've been denying it or avoiding it or fucking stalling around it. You've had your moment of reckoning. Which is it? Yeah. And to see what has actually brought you to where you are is faith. Faith in finite self. So without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith, which means you've been defeated by self, yeah? And the defeat by self was paid for and fueled by your faith in self, yes? In other words, the gun that shot you, you supplied the bullets in a way. So it was our faith that fueled the defeat of self. This is how self defeats us. Hopefully you're clear that self has defeated us. How it defeats us is through our own faith, yeah? The faith that we have put into self to be our director, to lead us, to tell us what's going on, to protect us, to secure us, that has failed, yeah? Why? Because it's a failed system. Yeah? It's like a snake inevitably is going to probably bite you, even though you treat it really well, because its nature is to bite. Yeah. Well, the nature of what we've been relying on is that it's unreliable. Like some people say, I see it on YouTube, the mind is great as a servant, but not too good as a master. Yes. It's when it's in the master position, no bueno. It could be a good servant, but not the master. Yeah. Yeah. So had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith, for did we not believe in our own reasoning? Let's say, did we not believe in the thoughts? I don't believe they're our thoughts. They're drenched in alcoholism. Yeah. Most alcoholics think very similar to other alcoholics. That's why it's easy to recognize them if you've been one. If you've been taken over by alcoholism, you can recognize someone that's taken over by alcoholism. It's like when I used to go to the clubs, I knew if someone did coke because I did coke. Yeah. I could tell that fucker's high on coke because I was high on coke. Yeah. Yeah. So uh did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we had been faithful, abjectly faithful, spiritless servility. Wow. To the God of reason. So, in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. So, if you say all the time, there's no inconsistency in it. It's all the time. Now, it's not only when you're here and not there, or there and not here. All the time, faith has something to do with our condition. Where is thy faith now? You can tell the tree by the fruit. That's what Jesus suggested. Hey, if you can't see inside what's going on, you can tell the tree by the fruit. Yeah. If it's bad fruit, it comes from a bad tree. If it's good fruit, it comes from a good tree. Check it out. Check your life. Yeah. You don't have to try. Where's the tree? No, just the fruit can tell you. So the fruit, what we look at as the fruit of the self tree is the manifestations of self in our life. Yeah. And we look at the common fruit of that tree, which is resentment, fear, and walking over other people to get what we want, which is self-centeredness, self-seeking, and frightened. Yes? All self, self, self. Those are the fruit of the tree of self. If you have been eating those fruit, you're sitting under that tree. You will know the tree by its fruit. Yeah? The fruit of resentment is usually called yours. The fruit of fear is called your fear. The fruit of this is you. It's always you that's connected with it because you represent faith. And then you have faith and resentment, and they can live on for 20 years. Faith and fear, which is not even fear, it's mental anxiety induced. Yeah? So it's actually faith in the thoughts that produces the sense of fear. It's faith. Faith is, it's more important, and the need to get that which you want is more important than considering others. So you just trample over every fucking other person. That's faith. Faith in the need to get that which you don't have is so important that you do almost anything to get it. That's faith driven. Yeah. And it says here, this is the big book. This isn't we're not coming out of this is a big book on page 54. So in one way or another, meaning basically always, anyway, yeah? So in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. Wow. How many book studies have you gone to that go just run right over this? This is a huge statement. Yeah. This is like seeing the dynamic of the car before the emblem Paul was put on it. Yeah. And what drives the car isn't you, it's faith. Faith. It's the fuel. Now, the driver, that the one that's driving the faith, where it wants to take the faith is what's going to manifest in your life. Yeah. So if you have faith in the thoughts, you're probably uncomfortable right now because your thoughts are telling you you should be doing something else, ba da ba, be ba 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 ba, and it never lets you sit in or relax wherever you are because you should be somewhere else. Yeah, it's completely faith and thought, completely faith and thought. If you are constantly looking away from the moment you're in, that's faith that's causing that looking away. Yeah. There's 5 anchors to this experience. You're seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching right now. Yeah. The only thing that could break those anchors is in faith in the head, where you override the present moment and you're completely occupied with past and future. That's insanity. Yeah. You're so afraid that you're missing life. You're missing life. It's in the small moments. It's not like your big vacation next week, right now. Yeah. So what reminds you? Seeing, hearing, 5 reminders, and the head overrides it through faith. Yeah. Something's off if you believe the most primary thing you need to learn how to do is be in the moment, when the fact is you can't be out of the moment. It's insane. It's freaking insane. So, yeah, I feel this is do you really believe? Uh, I think faith makes the man. Man doesn't have faith. Truly. And it's what the faith is in is the most important thing. Yeah. Faith can be very destructive, put in the wrong driver, or it can be incredibly beneficial, put in the right driver. I would imagine we have come to the conclusion which is the wrong and right in these choices. Yes. We should have been weaned off the idea that faith in self is finally going to work out. I hope that's happened. Yeah. And now we're convinced of the winning side, which is faith in the infinite. I mean, that should be done, right? That should be mute now. And if it isn't, life will gladly slap you around a little more. And all these crises that are imposed by something foreign to you, you'll keep taking it to be you, and you'll try to make the self better, and on and on and on and on. Yes. Yeah. Well, fantastic. Thank you for this. And what it told me is I need to get some glasses and have them close.
Thanks, Paul. That was great. I remember the first time I saw that with the self-imposed crisis from a different, viewing platform, and it was revelatory.
Yes.
And then the second part of that, where faith had been involved all along, that was, I mean, I'd been in AA 25 years before I saw that. And
Well, Kurt, you don't have to change the thes, and the a. The change in emphasis of what self implies changes the book to me completely. Yeah.
yeah,
When you can see self as something foreign to you and then read the book as self as something foreign to you, a lot of possibilities that have been not available seemingly become available.
mhm,
Because this is really about freedom from the bondage of self.
yeah,
So the whole book changed by just having a different emphasis on the word self. Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah, it has. And it's the same thing. We abandon ourselves. If you stop the hour, that's a sense of ownership, OUR. And then selves, you would say, uh, this foreign thing that we're identified as, we're going to abandon. So we're going to abandon this idea that we have been identified with, which is self. Yeah. So we're going to abandon ourselves over to the care of this higher power. Yes.
mhm,
Beautiful, literally.
yeah,
Yeah. Because it knows what to do with it. It's the true master that will put it to being of service. And it can be a good servant, as they say. It's just a lousy master. So it's masquerading as the master by playing God. But when it's introduced to the master, it'll take its fucking humble position, begrudgingly or not. Yeah. Yeah. Do you believe you went to it was that you were virtuous in recovery? No, it was pragmatism. Nothing else fucking worked.
yeah,
If you could have still gotten away with it, you would have tried to still get away with it. You were fucking convinced gig is up. Yes. I'm washed up, and no human power can seem to change that. Meaning me also. Yeah. And in that moment, that moment of getting whacked sober probably would have died on the vine of tomorrow. But I was introduced to recovery that night. It was incredible. And recovery has allowed that miracle to extend for 36 years. And I don't see it propels itself. Yeah. I'm along for the ride in a sense. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, tell the truth about the one driver, and that will make you sincerely open to have the other driver. Yeah. And then get to work. Do 4 through 9. Yeah. Do service, get a commitment. Start trying to absorb these principles, because they're going to be the way of life for the action figure. Instead of being led by self, you'll be led by the principles of recovery. Much better format. Much, much better. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
So
So do we have any hands? Let me look here. I don't see any. Any questions, statements? Anybody want to share in relationship to what we read? Oh, we got Artur's. And then, let me get you here. There you go.
Hello,
hello.
I'm new here. Can you give me, please, a definition of the self?
A definition of self is the sense of being a long-lasting, independent, separate entity. Hold on, I got someone here. It's a self. That's a good working definition. You heard it?
I did.
Long-lasting, independent, seemingly separate entity. Every time you think and picture yourself, you picture yourself as a body. That's an entity. Yeah. Hold on. Hello? It's all right. Come on. Can leave it there. I'm on the Zoom here. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Someone just gave me a bag of persimmons, whatever. So yes, so if you look at the head, just look at memory. When you remember something, how are you pictured?
As the body.
There you go. Long lasting. The head knows it's not going to last forever. It's long lasting, feels independent. This is the basis of separation. Yeah. Your entity doesn't look like this entity. I'm different. Yeah. So long lasting, independent. So these thoughts are mine. These feelings are mine. Yet basically, everyone's sort of following the same system called self-centeredness. So the feeling when you are doing that, you're the doer. The sense that when you're seeing, it's Paul that's seeing. Yeah. The sense that when you're hearing, it's you as the body that's the hearer. The sense that when there's thinking, notice, you're the thinker. That sense of self is the sense that says it has an ego and it needs to lose an ego. That's the sense of self. Yes? So it's a sense. Is there a self that's putting out that perfume? No. It's a mental sense that imagines that sense to be a body. Yeah? So now you are seen as a body. Yeah. And the brain interprets our life, and it interprets the life to the body. So you are living a self-centered view, so to speak. And if it's working, great. If it ain't, there's a solution. Yeah. So that's that's the working idea I use. Yeah. In the big book, first of all, I don't believe there's a self. I believe there's a mental activity called selfing, because I don't believe there's anything but verbs here. I don't believe there are nouns. Yeah. I don't think there's a noun doing a verb. I think there's verbing that imagines a noun. So selfing is verbing that imagines a noun. Yeah. So, but those are just personal, that stuff. Here is just to see that what has defeated you is foreign to you, because that opens up the true possibility of being free from it. Yeah. Most people in recovery, the first few years of recovery, get caught in the web of self can't get out of self. They've been trying to be free as self, and they realize the futility of that, I hope. And now the emphasis shifts to I am free from self. Yes. It's much different, much different. Yeah. Yeah. So the mental activity sees you as a body, thinks about you as a body, remembers you as a body. So if you're listening to that station, for all intents and purposes, you're a body. There you go. And that would really play into the spiritless servility. Yeah. And it's so insane that people try to become spiritual as a body. So first thing they have to do, they got to look spiritual. Made out of some conceptual idea that Jesus was like a left coast surfer with blue eyes and blonde hair. You should speak in a monotone, take long pauses between things. Yes. The body can give it a good shot, but it can't imagine anything not being a body. We're not made in God's image. We've made a God in our image. We think God is a body or a thing that we're going to play like an 18-hole golf game with. It's you know what I mean? God is a jealous God. I don't think God has I don't think it has a bone in anybody. It doesn't have a body. It doesn't have a bone. Therefore, it doesn't have any jealous bone in anybody. I think the Old Testament was talking about the head, the finite self. I do. When they thought that God was talking to them, I think it was self talking to them. Kill this person, do that, do this. It sounds like what I used to hear when I was out there. So yeah, but I don't know what the people who wrote the book meant. I just know how I read it now. And the basic thing I want to recognize is that it's foreign to me, because I have realized I'm not going to make it an amigo or a service animal. And if it's only part of me, I wish someone else would convince it, because it thinks it's all of me. I haven't been able to convince it it's only part of me and go along with the group. It seems to immediately, it's like an invasive plant in a garden, yes? It just won't stay in its little area. It just grows over everything. Yeah. Yeah. So, and in AA, sharing a message in AA, we play very strongly on contrast. So there's only two ways. Yeah, it's either this or that. It's not a merging of two great rivers to become a greater river. It's either you're on this one river or you're on the other river. Yeah. So it's good to describe what it's like to be on one river, because they're both rivers. The condition in you are going to be driven, but what's driving you is really, yes. I mean, the rivers are both water, but some rivers are super polluted. You can't swim in them. Yeah. They look just like a good river, but they're not. They're toxic. Yeah. 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 So we're gonna.
Eileen, oh, sorry, Paul.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. I just, yeah.
Eileen, are you done, Arturos? Anything else? Eileen, go ahead.
Hi, Eileen here. Thank you, Paul. I'm wanting to understand this because when I came in, I didn't have a desire to stop drinking. I've always thought of it as, and I would say I had a desire to stop hating myself. So as I'm listening to you today, I didn't have the vocabulary, but so it sounds like I was thinking I was hating the driver, or I was hating
Yeah.
the thoughts that I was having, but I had no separation from them, so I didn't know that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The driver is not the car. So everyone's talking about, well, the driver can get out of the car. Well, the car can be a car without the driver. It needs a driver to go, but it's not destined just to have one driver. It has an option in this life. And AA says, that, yeah, there's a way, it's two, and one we suggest is probably better, which is trusting the infinite. So it's not you trusting, your trust. That's what you are, or faith. It's not you. The idea of you, that's faith. Faith in this idea of you. Yeah. But you don't have any faith. You're an inert body in a sense. So faith, I feel, is the driving force of what we are. And that valuable resource is better in a different pair of hands than it has been in. Yes. Seriously. And so we make a decision because at that case, the car can't, it's not a self-driving car. So it needs to make a decision. I don't want this driver anymore. And then do certain things to produce that effect where something takes over. And now you feel there's all those descriptions of what it's like to have a new driver. Yeah. Yeah. And this, like it says, the new employer, you could use the word driver, being all powerful, it's going to take care of you. Yeah. As long as you stay close to it, you can't be far from everywhere. And performance works well. That's a very vague requirement. There you go. So right now, who's saying that you're not fulfilling that already? And what's part of the contract you're going to be taken care of? Isn't that a nice feeling to lay in or live the day in? Yes, for sure. You're constantly looking for evidence. Are you being taken care of? No. You rest in faith that you're taken care of. Yeah. When I used to I would be resting in incredible unrest with the being taken care of by the infinite, the finite self. I mean, there was no sense of being taken care of coming. Yes. There was anxious, irritability, restlessness, because my condition was completely dependent on a lot of other things. Yes. That were unreliable. There's almost nothing worse. Doing bad coke is worse than doing no coke. Doing bad cocaine is worse than doing no cocaine. Seriously. Fucking seriously.
Hey,
At least when I was out there.
I'm on
It
Zoom.
was a super fucking drag. You could handle not doing it. But when you did something shitty, you scraped up $25 and you shot it and it wasn't fucking any good. It was so demoralizing. And yet you had no other thing to rely on. And there you went back out to try to convince someone to give you $25 so you can do it again. Yes, that is spiritless servility. Spiritless servility. So I feel, I don't know about you, it's been demonstrated here that I can be convinced. I didn't know that out there, but I have been convinced of many things since. Yeah. And I humbly believe if if you come to these talks and listen, you may become convinced that self is foreign to you. Yeah. I do, because I have faith in it. I have faith in the message. And here in time, it may be needed to be repeated, but great. Yes, we have the mechanism. You seem all comfortable. You're not fucking, swinging from a tree branch. You're all seemingly restful and got a nice cushion under your ass and shit, so you can hear it. And letting a new emphasis, when you're looking at things, seeing a new emphasis applied to it. Yeah. And you may see things quite differently. Yeah. So I have so much faith in it. I'll come every day here. I don't, I mean, to me, it was, I have a feeling most people, as an action figure, need a purpose. Well, this is the purpose I have right now, and I'm all for it. I mean, I have a lot, I joke around a lot, but I have a lot of honor for relief from the bondage of self. I really do, huge amount. And I'll be here as long as I physically can be here, because I humbly believe if you don't see this bondage of self, you're going to be looking from the bondage of self. I don't see a huge possibility of that not happening. So if you can become aware of it, you know that a lot of that whole sentence, that paragraph started with without knowing it. So a lot of shit happens to us without knowing it, and then gets established. And then it's sort of more difficult to get it evicted when it thinks it's presenting itself as the owner of the house. Yeah. So this is about what would happen if you knew something. Well, let's see. Let's see that if you knew these thoughts weren't yours, would you be so easily led by them? No, you probably won't be. Yeah. If you realize that feelings aren't facts. Yeah. What? Yeah. You may not base a real stupid decision on a feeling thinking it's a fact. Yes. So you will get into the habit of restraint of pen and tongue. You don't jump out and say something because you've had so many fucking weird consequences. You've learned. Yes. It's not out of virtue. I just don't want to be stalked by someone or something. Yes. I don't want. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And there's, I swear, I've met people that are super great of describing everything in the big book, and they know what the language meant in the 30s, everything like that. But I never was hearing this idea. And to me, this idea is the most important idea. Because if we have to get to the exact nature of the wrong, and we think the exact nature of the wrong is us, it's going to be difficult to get out of it as it. Yeah. But if you see the exact nature of the wrong is foreign, it's a foreign nature. It's like a flu that you've seemed to have had for 60 years. Yeah. Yeah. And you live as if you're the flu basically now. You've forgotten all the other possibilities that were available, and now your security is having a lot of fucking facial tissues and shit like that because you're basically sick all the time. If you see that which is defeating you as foreign, it gives you a great possibility of being free from it. It's just pragmatic, yeah, in my eyes, yeah. So it wasn't working any other way. I tried to get better as self. I did. I got into spirituality in the 3rd year of sobriety. It took a few years just to be able to sit still for a few minutes. I was so flipped out physically and nervous wise. And I gave it a damn good shot. I put my money where my mouth was, went to India and fucking Burma and things like this. And the bondage of the self just took on a different character in the movie. It was the bad guy. Now it was the policeman. I mean, I don't want to live as either of them. I don't want to be led by either of them. I don't. I don't want to be led by the thief. I don't want to be led by the policeman. I don't. They seem to be the only options. In trusting finite self, they were the false options I was given. Either live under the fucking narration of being a policeman where you have to be perfect all the fucking time, or fucking become totally irresponsible and fucking be a thief. And yet I attract, when I first started drinking, I realized I had magnetic appeal to people in uniform. So that wasn't a good move either, because I got fucking intervened upon constantly by authorities. So, and then when I got sober, the policeman took over again for the first few years. And I was on like a self-imposed probation. Yeah. I mean, it was painful, but I stayed on the table because there was nothing, there's no other option. And then I saw the self as the policeman and the self as the thief, and I'm not either of them. Wow. Yeah. So now I hear another narrative, and it turned the other two narratives into comedy, which is great. Unbelievable. The third narrative have used the other two narratives as comedy. So I keep myself amused all the time. Because the policeman says something, the thief says something.
That's classic.
That's
Okay.
like the toothpaste. You remember that thing of the toothpaste? Selfing appears as an activity with two faces. Yeah, yeah. Broadly, in our society, I would break it into the thief and the policeman. Yeah. So, yeah. To me, the thief was better than the policeman, but the consequences and the fucking conditions that I ended up in were unbearable. But I was still going to hang on to the thief, really, because I didn't want to listen to the police. I just was, and yet the first few years that's the station that dominated the station, the radio frequencies. Then I heard something and it changed. I didn't know there was a third possibility. Hearing neither. I didn't think you could be directed by silence. I didn't. I had no idea. I had no fucking idea. Yeah, I did. I thought there was only two options, and they both looked fucking pretty bad at that point. But thank God, yeah,
That's funny.
yeah. So yeah, just stay on the operating table. Don't get any fucking spiritual ideas about replacing recovery with something else. Just do what we do. Yeah, be available to others. Yeah, practice the principles as best you can. If you can't, limit them for a while, the affairs and your activities. And just don't get up and don't take the role of the doctor. Just, yeah, yeah. And you will know the tree by its fruit. That's simple.
Yeah.
And then you can do whatever, being freed from the yoke of this bondage of self, then become a spiritual giant or not. You do whatever. You get, I mean, the action figure the mold isn't cement. It can be changed and altered. You'll be surprised what you get into. And yeah, you may become like a clothes designer or something. Yeah, you have no idea. That's the fun of it. You just get, when you're led, oh man, it becomes revelatory. Yeah. And after the theme of the downloads, you're not getting ready to get a blow, like in the head. The head you wanted to know because you were so fucking afraid of the unknown because so much shit had happened, yeah? But now you don't know, and it's great because the way you've been treated over the years not knowing has worked. Yeah. So you have your little pay scale and you have a need to know. And when you need to know something, you'll probably will know it. But if you don't need to know it, it's not a necessary miscellaneous thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So
Arturus has got his hand up again. Did you have another question, or was that just left over from before?
Arthur,
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I barely can see you, but yeah, I can hear you. You're in some
Okay.
kind of tunnel or
Sorry, I have a candlelight. That's why you can't see me.
I thought you were in like one of those things that people build for for the bombs. Yeah. All right, Arthur, what's the next question?
You mentioned that there's an easy solution to being self if you don't like it.
No, I didn't say that. First of all, you're not being self. Self is implied by the mental activity. You're not being self, you're being. Yeah.
Okay,
There's only
then
being, you're
do the
being,
self.
that's being. You're not being self. You're living as if you are one. That's not being it. Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's not easy for self, but it's easy. Yes. If you see you're not self, you're going to lose interest in it. And the reason why it seems to be difficult is because the amount of interest or faith that's in it. Yeah. So when you lose faith in the failed system, what are you going to recognize? It's a failed system. Pretty easy. Yeah. Yeah. So, no, this idea of self, the action figure has its destiny, has its purposes, has its stage, but its stage is a myopic one compared to our own nature. Yes. So this will, to me, the greatest goal here would to be able to travel lighter through this life. And seeing I'm not that idea of me has allowed that to occur. Yeah. So it's been loss of interest in self. A lot of the great effects of recovery start to occur. The requirement is losing interest in self, and self cannot lose interest in self. So if you're identified as self and you set out to lose interest in self, that's more interest in self. I'm just telling you. Yeah. So when you swear that you're going to surrender to the infinite as the finite self, you have surrendered to the finite self already. Yes? Yeah. This is not surrendering as the finite self, it's surrendering the finite self. It's not you as the finite self surrendering. That's going to be a transactional deal. But in this case, you're surrendering the idea that you're a finite self. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thanks, buddy. So, Paul, that's the time we got. It's 11:35.
great.
Appreciate your presentation, buddy. I always do. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I'm going to go on this a little. Can you imagine that you could be something other than a thing? You know, that maybe you're a force than a thing. Yeah. And a lot of this, what we're reading here, they're implying that faith is what we really are. Yeah. And that what we think we are is being moved by faith. And in our case, we've had an experience of a faith moved by finite self and what can happen to a life moved by the faith in finite self. So we're incredible, I would say, avid uh, uh, we have an avid availability for perhaps there's a better way. Yeah. And that better way faith can be moved or directed would be by the infinite. Yeah. That's really the suggestion. So, and then it's not a clear-cut thing because being identified as faith, a lot of the things we seem to do, we're doing actually to reinforce the identification as faith without knowing it, as self without knowing it. Yeah. So these why we share a lot of warnings because a lot of us have gone through these basic stereotypical mistakes. Yeah. And we have seen as they came to a conclusion in our community that self can't get out of self. And that doesn't mean it's not going to keep trying, because the idea of self never gets the idea that self can't get out of self. It just doesn't. It'll just keep on keeping on, as we know. Yeah, as we know. If one thing fails, it just starts doing something else in an addictive manner, and then something else. Yeah, it just refuses to get it. So we like to bypass that by seeing it as not us. Yeah, because if you arriving at heaven is based on its condition, it's going to be a long slog. I would say pretty much futile. Uh, but if it's not you, you don't look back. It's like, Ulysses, supposedly, when he was leaving that island, the sirens started to sing and he looked back and that fucked him up. In this case, the head is singing like those sirens. And if you hear it and you don't take it to be you, you have the ability to not look back. You do. And so you can just sail on. And you'll be in the habit of not looking back. You should be afraid. If you're out to lunch, something can tell you what lunch was like. Don't you see? Self would like you to be out for lunch in your life so it can tell you what lunch was like. It wants to replace the living of a life with a narration of a life from its point of view. So it neutralizes you. You're sort of frozen in like a comatose state. And then you have look at what happened. Remember, you'd be at work and then you come home and at 8 at night, your head would tell you you had a bad day. So you were in the day the whole time. Yeah. So, and you'd start wondering, why wouldn't I notice it was a bad day when I was there in the day? Why is it that I'm out to lunch and I have to wait for the head to tell me how the day was at 8 p.m.? This is insane. So, hey, if we have surrendered our life to something, why wouldn't we expect it to tell us what it's like? And it does, from its point of view. When it says it's afraid and you feel, then you think, I'm afraid. That's bondage of self. When it says, I'm never going to get it, and then you go, I'm never going to get it, that's bondage of self. When it says my resentment, it's telling the truth. Resentment is a manifestation of self. Why do you mimic it and say my resentment? It's telling the truth. We're not hearing it. It's telling exactly, I'm afraid. It is. Yeah. I hate people. It does. I want to get back at people. It does. Why do you keep claiming to be you? It's talking as you. I'm afraid. If you stop, you're probably not, It's just mental anxiety a lot of the time. It's saying, oh, I'm this and that all day. And it just presents a glove and we just put our hands in it all the fucking time. That's bondage of self. Can you imagine what bondage of self would look like? You're in a world of touch, and yet something has put like a rough glove on. So everything you touch feels rough. Yes? And now you believe, you have great faith that this is a rough, hard world when it isn't. It's the glove you're fucking wearing. If you took out that glove, you would feel the softness of the rose petal. Yeah? You would know what it's like to stroke a fucking horse's mane and shit. But no, it's a forced surrender. You live from the interpretation of life through the glove. And you come up with grievances and all this fucking shit. Jesus Christ. Yeah. And because you think it's your hand, you never have the possibility, you never entertain you could take the glove off because you think you're assuming it's you. It's not you. Yeah. That assumption of you is the narcotic of the parasite. It's the anesthesia it gives you. It puts you out to lunch. And then it informs you of how its day was, riding you. That's, what is it? Let me, wait. Spiritless servility. Spiritless servility. They recognized it then, we can recognize it now. We're dealing and speaking about the same thing. They were speaking about it in 1935. We're speaking about it 2024. It's the exact same fucking movement that took them over is what's taking us over. They gave it the word self. Let's use the word. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I would just see it's foreign to us. Yeah. All right. Thank you again. Pleasure to see you.
Yeah, thanks again, Paul.
Oh, yeah. Mickey, I'm getting a lot of trucks stopping here, bringing persimmons, and now there's a Amazon. The kids love getting packages. Fucking Amazon's here like every other day. Yeah, well, here it comes. Yeah.
Paul, doesn't it even start out when we're awakened in each day, and it tells us, I woke up?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And I like eggs, and I like this, and I like that. Bob. Yes. Maybe somewhere it had a value, and it probably does in a world of survival, much more than in a world where you're past the point of survival, many of us, yes? I'm not like fighting my dog for a piece of meat, I got some kibbles and I have some food, yeah? So I think we're in more of a state of living than we are surviving. But the head, for it to survive, it has to have us very docile and out to lunch. That's why in a lot of the book it says without knowing it. And then also it says being convinced. Yeah. So now we were being convinced by the head, and now we're being convinced about the evidence of the head. Yeah. It had us convinced. And we were in a state of being convinced I was this and I was that and I was this. And now we are being convinced of the bogusness of that which we were listening to. Yeah. You have the ability to hear. You don't have to just to listen to this one fucking station. Seriously. Yeah. All right. I mean, I'm still getting hernia commercials from when I had a hernia from like 20 years ago. I mean, they never even update my supposed interests, hernia belts with, some shoes next to them. The newest hernia, I don't have a hernia. It's been like 20 years. Yeah. It's worried about me getting a date. I'm way past dating up there in the head. So sometimes its narrative is like from 1964, and it just doesn't even get close to landing on what's happening now. Oops, so go back to sleep, Paul. Get some new fucking loops, at least. The same old. Oh, all right. Thank you. All right. I am finally saying goodbye. See everyone. See you soon. Yeah.
Thanks,
you.
Paul. Thanks, Kurt. Great job.